On this episode of Watch Stuff With Us, more Mr. Ballen videos, more part 4.
All the things.
Thanks for checking out another episode of Watch Stuff With Us. I'm JD.
I'm Katie.
And we have our special guest. Where's our special guest? I'm going to get our special guest on the screen. There she is. Stevia is on the screen with us, and she's going to be watching and reacting to another Mr. Ballen video with us today. So if you are watching right now, please hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you are notified each and every time we go live or post a video. Thank you. So, without further ado, let me get the screens together so that we can watch this episode together. Now, this episode is called This Box Will Kill You. This was recommended by Stevia. So remember,
Halloween Scare-a-thon.
So remember, if it's bad, blame Stevia, not us.
As long as there's no claymation, Stevia, I'm here for it.
Stevia, real quick, you got any shout-outs?
Hi. No.
Oh, that's son of yours.
I just want to thank you guys again for having me on.
For sure. For sure. I was just wondering, maybe you had a shout-out or 12, a few thousand people.
I'll shout out to everyone who's in the chat.
Yes, for sure. For sure. All right. Now let's get started. This box will kill you.
I mean, they've had 8 million views so far and nobody's dead. I hope so. Fingers crossed.
I hope so too. All right. Let's watch.
Far and away, the scariest part of the story is Jason's when he brings the Dybbuk box home and goes to bed that first night and then the following night what he sees in his living room. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So
I feel like Stevia's dressed like him today.
Yes!
Was that on purpose?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Dude, that's awesome. See?
You guys got the same outfit on.
I am not perceptive like that at all.
Katie, the first video I ever encountered you were dressed as of Jeremy. So
so true. So true.
That is my little handmaid.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right. We'll keep it going. We'll keep it going.
If we ever do this again, I'm going to do it too.
Yes.
We'll just do it.
Yes. I need a flannel. Where's my flannel?
You don't own one.
I don't. I love the intro music. Does this is like a face to you? Like, I feel like these are eyes right here, and this is like the outline of the face. This is the mouth down here, and it's like a girl looking down.
How much have you drank?
Too much. Let's keep it going. The box.
The Dybbuk box.
Owned an antique shop right in downtown Portland at the base of the Burnside Bridge, which is considered the gateway to the city. Because Kevin owned this antique shop, he was always at yard sales and estate sales, looking to find the next thing he could sell at his shop. And so one day there was this estate sale over at this woman's house. She had just passed away. She was about 103 years old. She was a Holocaust survivor, and her estate was being sold. And so he goes over to the house and he sees the way they're selling all of her items is by bundling them in different lots. So depending on what item it was, they'd be bundled with similar items and then sold as a package. So the people there would be bidding on the whole lot. They couldn't buy individual items. And Kevin had his eye on one particular lot called Lot 29. And Lot 29 included a couple of small tools that he wanted to sell in his shop. And it had this mystery box, and that's exactly as it was labeled. It just says mystery box on it. And he was intrigued by it. And so he placed a bid on Lot 29, and ultimately he won the bid. And
nope. Mystery box. First off, I'm not going after a mystery box. If you are watching in the chat, would you go after something labeled as mystery box? Yes or no?
My look is to be a cotton ball.
I think these people would be happy if it was a cotton ball because obviously this is like a death box. So, Stevia, would you have gotten the mystery box?
No, I'm not really that. I really don't like surprises.
Yeah. I need my stuff straightforward. I want to know what's in it. I feel like it's a waste of money, or what's in it is gonna be really bad.
Like some creepy possessed doll.
Right, like anything crazy. That's what it would have been in it, and obviously this did have something bad in it.
Happy about it. So he takes the contents of lot 29 and he wheels them over to his car. And as he's loading stuff into the back of his car, someone behind him says, "Oh, so you went with the Dybbuk box, huh?" And Kevin, in his head, went right back to his childhood because growing up, he had always been scared of Dybbuks because a
Tro
Dybbuk
says
is a
yes.
malevolent spirit.
He would have got the mystery box. You are braver than me.
To say, "Oh, you better not do that, Kevin, or the Dybbuk's going to get you." And so he grew up terrified of Dybbuks. And so his interest is piqued. And Kevin turns around and says, "Did you just call this box a Dybbuk box?" And the woman's like, "Yeah, and my grandmother was terrified of it, and she said no one could ever open it." And Kevin turns to look at the box. It's about 2 foot high by 1 foot wide, and there are these little doors that swing open on the front, and then on the bottom there's a drawer that comes out, and there's one lock that sits across the 2 doors, and it's currently locked with a little padlock. And he looks up at her and he goes, "Why can't you open it?" And the woman just says, "We never knew, but our grandmother would always go every time we said the word Dybbuk." And so it was weird enough that we just never asked any questions and we stayed away from her Dybbuk.
Is this something from like a different country or something? Because I've never heard of Dybbuk, and also I've never seen anybody go. And
can I answer that?
Yeah,
yes.
Go for it, Stevia.
Okay. No, maybe you guys didn't hear at the beginning. She was a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, a Dybbuk is like, okay, I'm not an expert in Judaism, so forgive me, but it's like an evil spirit or something of that nature in that culture. So, yes, to answer your question, this is she was from a different country. This came with her across the sea.
Okay.
Got it.
Why would you bring it with you, though? If you're afraid of this thing, why would you carry it with you?
Yeah, if this is bad, you should have left it where it was at. Oh, all right, let's keep going.
Kevin agreed that was pretty weird, and he finished loading his car, shut the trunk, said bye to the woman, hopped in his car, and he drove away. And he never really gave it a second thought. At this point, he's not thinking the Dybbuk box is anything malevolent. He thinks it's just some random chest that he won at an auction. Kevin drives back to his antique shop and he begins unloading all the things he won at the auction.
I wonder how much he paid for it.
He brings them inside and he brings them downstairs because the top floor, the main floor, was really where he sold things. When he got new items, he would bring them downstairs to his warehouse of sorts, which was much bigger than the first floor, had lots of rows of shelving, and it had a workstation down there. He would bring his new things down there and he would price them and get them ready before bringing them back up. And at some point, he brought the Dybbuk box in, and he brought it down, and he put it on the back table. He was about to just leave it there and go back upstairs when suddenly he became really curious, and he really wanted to open the Dybbuk box. And so he goes over, and he kind of yanks on the front 2 doors. He doesn't want to damage it, but he can tell this lock is relatively new, and it's not just going to come off. And so he doesn't have the key to it, and he doesn't have a way to clip the lock. And so he takes a screwdriver and he basically wedges it underneath the actual metal clasps that are attached to the wood. And he slowly kind of bends it up and bends it off and pops it out of the wood. And as soon as he does that, the doors swing open and there's like a mechanical device inside of the Dybbuk box that activates the drawer. Basically, anytime the doors open, the drawer also opens at the same time. And Kevin remembered thinking how silly it was that this kind of old, crummy looking wine closet had this fairly complicated mechanism inside of it that still worked. Inside the Dybbuk box were 2 pennies from the 1920s. There was a used candle. There were 2 locks of hair. There was this small tombstone that said Shalom on it. And there was also a small...
But is there a cotton ball?
No cotton ball.
I'm just saying, that would have been my look.
Wine goblet that was inside.
Random stuff.
And that was it. And Kevin immediately thought, well, this is just some older woman's keepsake. And these things maybe have sentimental value to her, but they don't to me. And so he shut the Dybbuk box, pushed it to the side of the desk, and walked upstairs and didn't give it another thought. Kevin had one employee at the antique shop. Her name was Jane. She was a younger woman. She was an incredible saleswoman, and Kevin thought very highly of her.
Jane does.
And so the day after he had brought the Dybbuk box into the antique shop and put it downstairs on the desk, he needed to run out and do some errands, and so he put Jane in charge of the store. And so Kevin leaves, and Jane locks the front door to the shop behind Kevin because she needed to go downstairs and get a few items that she wanted to bring upstairs to sell that day, and it was before opening time. So front door's locked, no one else is inside the shop, and Jane goes down into the basement. Once you went down the wooden steps into the basement, you'd be looking out at this huge room of all these industrial shelves that run the length of the room, where they would keep their antiques and other valuables on. And the lighting down there was never that great because they used these long fluorescent tube lights that at best cast a kind of subtle.
Of course the lighting isn't great.
This is all just a huge note for me.
Right?
A huge note.
All notes.
Actually go up and change them because you needed to place a ladder, but the ladders were not perfectly aligned with the lights. You basically had to reach over the shelving where all the antiques were, and you ran the risk of knocking things over. And so a lot of times Jane and Kevin would wait until you were down to like 1 or 2 crappy working lights before they'd say, okay, we really got to go up there and replace some of these bulbs. And so as it happens, this day, they're down to like 2 or 3 working lights.
Of course.
Classic horror movie fashion.
Right? Of
Going
course.
into this dingy basement with very poor lighting. And so once she gets to the bottom of the steps, she walks to the far end of the room, a little bit away from where the Dybbuk box was placed on that back table. She's in the other corner in the back of this basement, and she's getting some things off the shelf when all of a sudden she stops, and she can't help but shake the feeling that she feels like someone is watching her. Now, she is down in this basement all the time, whether it's well lit or dark, whether Kevin is there with her or she's alone. This is a place she goes all the time, and she's never had this feeling before. There's no way to get into the basement unless you come down the stairs, and she locked the front door, and she was the only one who came downstairs. She hasn't heard anything. There's no other way to leave this space, so she doesn't know where
She works in the antique shop,
from, but she really can't shake it. And as she's kind of looking around, and she's starting to get a little bit paranoid, the phone rings. They had a landline that was on a table right at the base of the stairs. The phone rings down there, and it startles her. Then it kind of jumps her back into reality, and she's like, okay, I'm getting paranoid. And she walks over and she picks up the phone, and it's actually her friend who was planning on coming by the antique shop that day. So as they're chatting, Jane hears what sounds like a broom. Imagine if a push broom is lined up against the wall and then it falls over, the sound that the wooden stick would make as it hits concrete.
No.
That's the sound she hears as she's on the phone. She startles her again, and she goes, hey, let me call you back. She hangs up on her friend, and she's looking out. And because the lighting is terrible from where she is, she's now at the foot of the stairs looking down all these rows, and she's heard that stick land on the ground on the far side, back where she had been originally. She's kind of looking around, and she can't see anything. And so she takes a deep breath, and she begins walking down the rows to see what fell over. And as she's walking down the row, something smashes behind her. She turns around, and one of the fluorescent tube lights has fallen from the ceiling and smashed onto the ground. And so all of a sudden, she doesn't want to explore this falling room that's behind her in the dark corner of the basement.
Yes.
Instead, she's ready to leave. And so she starts walking back towards the stairs to get out of here. And as she's walking down one of these rows, a wooden chair that is on one of the shelves comes flying off of it and lands squarely in the middle, blocking her path. And there's no way this could have happened unless someone pushed this chair. And suddenly she thinks, someone's down here with me. And she screams and she hurdles the chair and she runs to the steps. She starts running up. And to her horror, there is a metal door that locks the basement at night. So if someone were to break in, it's another layer to protect the store from
saw that
thieves.
coming.
And it was shut and locked. It can only be locked from the outside and with a key. So
The only way she'll be saved is her
by
friend.
accident. And now she's freaking out because she's trapped in the basement with some person running around pushing chairs over.
Yeah. Like, this is like my worst nightmare. This is like, yeah, this is really bad because when I was younger, like, I'm one of those people that when I was younger, no, definitely didn't have a Dybbuk box. But like, if I'm going, like, I don't do it.
Oh,
where'd we go?
Oh, there we go. There we
oh,
go.
Sorry.
So we're gonna wait for a second. Yeah, I would go from our basement, like, you know, my old house.
Yes.
I would go from our basement to upstairs, but I would always feel like someone was like right behind me.
It's always the basement.
So, like,
scary. Or you turn the light off and you run as fast as you can up the stairs real
I
quick.
always feel like that. Like, I don't
Yeah.
feel like that at this house at all.
I don't.
I feel super comfortable here. But when I was younger, I would always feel like that. And like, to be actually locked, like, I could imagine being that kid going up my steps and then not being able to like get out. Like, that would be horrible. That would be horrible. Like, I'm getting anxious just thinking about it right now.
I
Like,
can see it at
super
your, I
anxious
can
just
see it at
thinking
your
about
old
it.
house too. I'd also be
Yeah.
launching those stairs.
Yeah, like
I mean, it's a lovely house, but I can see how it could be creepy.
yeah, I'm getting anxious like right now thinking about it. Like that's bad. That's bad. Ugh.
Keep watching.
Can you relate, Stevia, at all?
Okay, this is really funny. I literally had planned at some point tonight to ask you guys if you had any ghost stories to tell.
Oh, I got ghost stories for sure.
I have 3 off the cuff, but yes.
Okay, let's save our ghost stories for the end. Once this is over,
I'm here for
I
that.
definitely got a few that I could share for sure.
I don't have any.
Oh, I got legit ghost stories.
Well, we have one from our old house, I suppose.
Yep,
That works.
Yep. I got 3 that, yeah, for sure. All right, let's get to it. Let's get to them though.
Perfect.
We got to get through this first.
And breaking lights. And so she grabs the gate and she starts shaking it. And she's yelling for Kevin, thinking maybe he came in and forgot I was down here and shut and locked the gate. And she's checking over her shoulder, looking down into the basement, and she starts hearing more lights falling off the ceiling and shattering on the ground.
Man.
She is in absolute panic mode. She's just waiting for someone to come bounding up the stairs towards her. She has no idea what to do. She pulls out her phone and she calls Kevin. Meanwhile, Kevin is making his way back to the antique shop. He's only a couple minutes away, and he sees his phone ringing that was sitting on the passenger seat. He picks it up, and it's Jane. And he answers, and immediately Jane is hysterical, and she's screaming that someone's in the antique shop that's breaking things. And Kevin's like, slow down, what's going on? And all he can hear in the background is the sound of what sounds like glass shattering and things falling and breaking. He's like, wait, what's going on? Are you okay, Jane? Like, where are you? And he hears her say, someone's in the basement. And he goes, well, where are you? And she's like, I'm in the basement. And he was like, get out of the basement. Call the police.
Someone is
As
me.
he's trying to get her to do that, the phone cuts out. Kevin was only about a block away from the shop, so he floors it to his shop. He parks outside, and he's thinking to himself, what am I walking into? Is there going to be like an active burglary going on? Is she going to be held hostage? Like, are the police going to be there? But he just knows he needs to get in there to Jane, and he gets to the front door, and it's locked. So he unlocks the front door, and he goes inside, and it's silent. He's looking around. There's no damage to the first floor. There's no damage anywhere. And he yells for Jane. There's no answer from Jane. And he starts walking kind of tentatively through the store towards the back. And he gets to that door leading down into the basement, the same one that Jane couldn't open when she ran up the stairs to get out of the basement. And he looks at it, and Jane's not at the top of the stairs anymore. And he's thinking, I didn't lock that door, and I'm the only one with the key to lock that door. How is it locked right now? Does Jane have a key that I don't know about? And why would she lock it? Does that mean Jane's up here somewhere? Is that what happened? And he's like, Jane, come out. Did you lock this door? But Jane's not on the first floor, and their first floor is very small. And so he thinks, okay, she has to be downstairs. And so he opens up the gate, he swings it open, and he starts walking down the steps. And he's really cautious as he's going down because, again, he has no idea what he's walking into. He hits the lights, but the lights don't work down there. And as he starts...
Okay, why is he going down to the basement too? Like, I would have opened the door and called for her first, at least.
I probably would have called the cops first.
No, I definitely want to call the cops. But like, if this was
better
you,
to have them just in case. I mean, I wouldn't want to go down by myself. You never know what you can see.
like, hey, you down there? Hey,
I wouldn't have been going in alone.
I'm not just going straight down there, all like,
I would not work in an antique store alone. I would not work in an antique store at all.
Yeah.
Antique means old. Old means dead people own these. That means haunted. That means nope.
Stevia, are you running straight down there or not?
Oh, well, I mean, me, as the business owner, yes. But since I'm not the business owner, no.
Nope.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
Big no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mess with haunted stuff. Like, I don't mess with that.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff doesn't scare me, but haunted stuff scares me.
Yep. No,
Same.
I get that.
Same. How do we always watch this stuff before bed?
Into the basement. He sees Jane sitting at the chair right next to that table where that phone is, and she's just sitting there kind of stunned. And he goes to Jane and he's like, what happened down here? And he glances out quickly at all the rows, and he sees all this furniture that's come off the shelves, and there's glass all over the ground. And he's looking at Jane, and Jane's just showing no reaction. She's sitting there like she's in shock. And he turns to Jane again, and he says, come on, you got to tell me what happened down here. And Jane just goes, I don't know. I don't know how to explain what happened down here. I was walking down the row, and then I felt like someone was watching me, and then things are falling off the ceiling and the shelves. I've never seen anything like this before. Now, at this point, Kevin's adrenaline is through the roof. He came charging in here thinking,
Same.
save Jane from some person breaking in and breaking stuff. But as far as he can tell, there's no one here but Jane. And so he decides he's going to take a flashlight and he's going to explore the basement because either there's someone here or Jane did this. So he grabs his flashlight and he starts walking around, and all he sees is a bunch of broken glass and some furniture that's come off the shelves and a couple other things that are on the ground. But other than that, there's no one down here, and there's no other way to come in or out of here besides the stairs. So after Kevin is certain that no one else is here, he turns to Jane, and he regrets this now. He says in an interview that he feels horrible about this now, but at the time, he's thinking to himself, you know, this had to have been Jane. Who else would have done this? I don't know why she did this, but there's no one else here. And he goes, Jane, did you do this? And this is when Jane's emotions came through, because before she was in shock, now she's mad. And she goes, F you, Kevin. And she leaves. And she doesn't say another word.
Same.
She doesn't come back. She quits on the spot. But at the time, Kevin believed she had done it. So he was kind of like, oh, well. He was not even a little bit thinking the Dybbuk box had anything to do with this. Just a couple of days after the basement incident, Kevin's mother was supposed to come by the antique shop, and the two of them were going to leave and get lunch together to celebrate her birthday. As soon as she walked in,
shouldn't there be a lot of questions? Like, I wouldn't be like, okay, if she just left and said F you and I'm out, like I would have still like, hey, what happened? Like I would have had to ask some questions.
I mean, I think if he legitimately thought that she did it, he should have called the cops.
Right. Something like
vandalism and stuff.
Yeah, there should have been some sort of like follow-up or something. Like I wouldn't just be like, you know, oh, she quit, so now let me clean this mess up.
But I mean, like, how long did he know her for? Because if you're working with somebody for a long time, you kind of get a little bit to be like a good judge of their character.
Right.
And to like just call them out and be like, oh, this person's just nuts. I mean, when anybody I've worked with in the past, I'd believe them right away, and I'd be like, no, I know you're.
Yeah.
You said there's something creepy. I'm out too.
Box. Weird things are happening. It's totally like what? Come on now. He knew
right.
Box.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Is right. So let's keep it.
Into the shop, Kevin goes, hey mom, I got a gift for you. And he brings over this wrapped box and he sets it down on the table right in front of his mother.
Is he gift or the Dybbuk box?
He unwraps it and it's the Dybbuk box. Before Kevin can explain what it is.
Why would you? Okay. Another question. Why would you give this to someone else? Like that thing would have been destroyed immediately. Or
at least like if you don't think it's anything valuable, put it in the trash or something. Be like, all right, I just like bid on this thing and it's just got junk inside. I don't need it. I'm just gonna trash it.
But hold on. Let me give it to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she'd like the
right.
Ball.
That makes no sense. Like that. Like I couldn't. Yeah.
You would give it to your mom. Your mom
wouldn't.
Your mom would like
my
that.
My mom would like it. She would like something like that because she likes like older antique type stuff.
Does.
But I wouldn't have given it to her if I would have had any sort of. I mean, like, well, I guess.
But he didn't think there's anything creepy about it. He hadn't put two and two together.
If our haunted bench that I've tried to give my mom, if that bench, like, there's a little bench that we have, and if that bench was haunted, and I had any idea that it was haunted, I would not like give it to my mom.
But this guy doesn't make any indication that he thinks that the Dybbuk thing is haunted, clearly, because he doesn't even think about it when he's accusing the lady of just being crazy.
All right.
So he just had already had it wrapped for his mom.
Yeah, but he still sucks as a son.
He does.
Let's just go with that.
Yeah, he's sucking in a few areas.
Yeah, he's not a good son.
He not make good choices.
At the other end of the store, and he was expecting a call, and he goes, "Hold on, Mom, I gotta get this." He goes to the back of the store to answer the call, while his mom is just sitting there looking at the box. And so while Kevin is at the other end of the store, his mother opens the Dybbuk box, and she says she had to sit down as soon as she opened it because she had this unbelievable, overwhelming overwhelming sense of dread as soon as the doors were open. And she's staring at it like she can't take her eyes away. And then all of a sudden, she has a massive stroke. And so she keels over, and she can't move, and she can't talk. And Kevin sees this happening. He runs over, and he's like, Mom, what's going on? He calls 911. And as the paramedics are working on her, she would say that while she was in this kind of paralyzed state, when she couldn't talk and she couldn't move, all she wanted to communicate was to somehow get her son to get rid of that box. She didn't know why, but she felt like the box had something to do with her having the stroke. And so all she could do was move her eyes. And so she found herself, with her son's right here, looking at the Dybbuk box and looking away, looking at the Dybbuk box, looking away, hoping her son would see her eyes as a signal to look at the Dybbuk box and put it together that that thing's bad. And Kevin does realize that his mom is flicking her eyes at the Dybbuk box, but in the moment, he's much more concerned about the health of his mother. And it wasn't until she got put in the hospital and she was being taken care of and he knew she'd be okay that he remembers, he kind of went over in his head later that day, that his mom was really scared looking, and she was looking at the Dybbuk box like that was the thing that was causing her to be scared. Not the stroke, the Dybbuk box. And Kevin starts thinking to himself, I don't know, there's something off about the Dybbuk box. Either it's really bad luck, or there's some truth to you don't open up this Dybbuk box. Either way, I don't want to take any more chances, because so long as I've owned this thing, I've had a horrible thing happen in the basement, and now my mom's had a stroke. So I want to get rid of it. So Kevin puts the Dybbuk box at the front of his antique store, and he puts it up for sale. And very quickly, a young couple came into the store, and they bought the Dybbuk box. And Kevin's relieved.
Okay. If I knew something was like horribly bad and was causing these bad things, I'm not going to sell it. Like, I'm going to destroy that thing. Like, that thing would end up in a burn pile.
It's like Jumanji. Yeah. You bury that.
Right.
You throw it in the river.
I would have put it in a burn pile and, like, burn that thing. Like, I would not just, like, say, okay, well, let me give it to somebody else and cause them horrible pain, too. Like, that's... Are you keeping it, Stevia, or are you? First off, are you selling it? What are you gonna do with it?
No, I didn't get it in the first place. But if I got it, would I sell it? Well, why don't you keep watching the story to see where it goes? Okay. You'll see. There's some answers coming.
Trust me, Stevia.
Okay.
I'm really hating this box.
This is a good one, though. This is a good one. I like this one. All right, let's watch.
He's like, thank goodness that bad luck charm, that whatever's going on with that thing is gone and out of my life. But just a couple of days later, he was in the back of the shop when he heard the door open and then the door shut. He walked out expecting to see some customers, but instead he sees the Dybbuk box that's sitting right inside his store. He must have just dropped it off. And so he walks up to it and he sees there's a piece of paper to the top of the Dybbuk box. And there's writing on it. And all it says is, this has an odd darkness about it. This really freaked Kevin out because in a way, it was like other people were confirming that something was wrong with this box. Kevin did not.
Nope. Burn the box. Destroy the box immediately.
No.
If that box, oh God, this is an awesome story because the box went away and then it came back. Like the box was a horror movie.
They didn't throw it away either. They gave it right back to the shop.
Right.
For free. They gotta have a trash pickup day. Like, come on, peeps. Get rid of this thing. Throw it in the river. Like,
yeah, you could have done anything with this box other than like, well, I guess they say like this dude probably knew it had some bad mojo and he sold it to us knowing that it had some bad mojo. So F it, I'm gonna give it back to him so that he can take the mojo back again. Like that's wild. That's wild. If it showed up again, I would have gotten rid of that box immediately. Yikes is right. You are 100% right, Joe. Like, yikes. Oh, okay. Let's keep going. And like, we're not even like halfway through yet. This is wild.
I want the Dybbuk box to be in his store. So he put it in his car and he drove back to his house. And he put it in his storage locker and he locked it up and then went back to work for the day. That night when he went home, he went to bed and he had this dream. Where in the dream, he's walking in this courtyard and he's holding the hand of this woman who he believes is his friend. and he trusts this person, and the area he's in feels very friendly, and it's a very positive dream. And as he's walking, all of a sudden, this person starts to pull away from him, and he can't move anymore, and he's losing the grip on this person's hand, and they keep moving and moving until their hand is out of his, and they disappear into the corner of the courtyard where it's totally dark. And so he's looking into the darkness, waiting for his friend to come out again, and he can't move. He's anchored to the spot, and as he's looking, he sees what looks like an old woman walking out of the mist, and her head is down, and he can't tell what she's doing, and she's pretty far away, and she's walking closer and closer to him, and when she's about 5-6 feet away, she raises her head up, and her whole face is falling off. All the skin is falling off of her face. It's rotting. She's like a corpse, and she raises her hands up in front of her, and then she grabs his face and begins pulling off pieces of his face until he suddenly wakes up. Kevin had to compose himself in bed because he was so scared from the dream he just had. He sits up and he goes into the bathroom to get a sip of water. And as he walks past the mirror, he notices there are marks on his shoulders and his arms that he did not have before. It looks like bruising almost. And he's looking at them and he's thinking, no way. That has nothing to do with the dream. This is just coincidence that, she was grabbing me in this area in the dream and now I have marks there. It's just coincidence. And so he kind of writes it off and he goes back to bed. And he has the same dream. He gets up again and he's breathing heavily. He's sweating because he just had the same dream. It was this terrifying dream. And he goes back into the...
I had a dream one time and continued the dream. I've never had a dream, woke up, then went back and had the same dream again. Nah, man. That's... Oh.
I have.
No.
Yeah.
It's not been like a nightmare like that. I mean, this is...
Did you have your face?
Yeah, I had my face,
Okay.
and I didn't have any marks on me, but this is when I'd start just chugging energy drinks and say I'm never sleeping again. Like, I'm not going to just try to go back to sleep after that. There's no way. That's terrifying.
Dude, yeah, it's one thing to have this horrible dream once, but then to have it again?
No.
No thanks.
Don't sleep.
Right? Yeah, I'd have to give up sleeping altogether, completely. I don't need sleep, trying to keep my face. All right, we'll keep going.
The bathroom, and now his entire back is covered in bruises. He has bruises all over his back, all over his arms. He's got red marks on his neck. And now, in his mind, he feels like it has to do with the Dybbuk box. The Dybbuk box is now in my backyard. It's not a coincidence that all of a sudden I'm having these horrific dreams
Bring it
that are
home with you.
apparently manifesting themselves in bruises and marks on my actual body. And so Kevin is done with the Dybbuk box, and instead of going back to bed, he goes to his computer and he puts the Dybbuk box on eBay up for sale. And that night, 2 college
What?
students named
Why?
Brian, who lived in Missouri,
He wants to make
they
money
buy
off
the
it.
Dybbuk box, and Kevin could not be happier to package that thing up and ship it off. Sam and Brian.
Stop. Why are you still... Okay, come on now. Okay, you deserve what this Dybbuk box is bringing you if you keep trying to sell it. Stop trying to sell it. Get rid of this thing. I don't care about the $13 that you're going to make off of this box. Burn this thing. It needs to go.
Use a hammer, smash that.
Dude, where's the dude with the axe from the last story? He needs to chop this Dybbuk box up. For real.
Yeah.
Dude, come on, man. Come on.
Had seen the ad on eBay for the Dybbuk box, and at first it did not seem remarkable, but they saw that Kevin had given this really detailed description of all the strange things that had happened for him since he owned the Dybbuk box. And I think clearly Kevin's angle was he's almost trying to advertise it to groups of people that might be interested in that. And Sam and Brian were exactly that demographic because they were looking for things online that were considered haunted. They wanted to see if ghosts and the paranormal were real. And so they were eager to buy the Dybbuk box and test it out. And so 3 weeks later, when this package finally arrives in Missouri at their house, Brian was still out at class, but Sam was home, so he receives the package. He eagerly brings it into the kitchen.
Sam buys
it. He sets it on the kitchen table, and just a few minutes later, Brian comes home, and Brian would say in interviews that when he walked in, it smelled like someone had peed all over the apartment, like there was urine everywhere. And he's walking around thinking, what happened? It smells so bad in here. And he walks into the kitchen where it was the strongest smell, and there's Sam proudly standing next to this awful-looking chest, which was, of course, the Dybbuk box. And he realizes, Brian does, that the Dybbuk box is what smells like urine. And he
Sam,
says, Sam, do you smell that? And Sam's like, yeah.
aren't you potty trained?
Sam would pick it up and
Get rid of the piss box.
Sam's not potty trained. He's blaming it on a box.
Get rid of the piss box. Immediately. I don't care what you got going on.
Sam, buddy.
Get rid of
You need some
the
Depends.
box. I don't care what you got going on. Do whatever you need to do. Get rid of the box. Like, it's just too many bad things. I'm sorry. Couldn't bring something in my house, immediately have something like that happen, and then not put two and two together.
I don't care if it's haunted or it smells like piss. Either way, it's leaving.
Yeah, the box.
I don't want either way. I don't want it in the house either way.
At which point, Stevia, would you have gotten rid of the box?
Again, I never would get the box. To be clear, no box.
Makes sense.
You wouldn't have even been at the sale. You would have been like, nah, this place. I'm not interested in anything here. I'm driving.
Someone says something is cursed, I would never, ever buy it. Just no. I don't mess with that at all. No.
Yep. I'm with you.
Just like Grandma said. Do it.
Yeah.
Ooh, to Brian as soon as he walked into the kitchen, and Sam joked about how he couldn't wait to sleep in the same bed as the Dybbuk box. They were just making a big joke out of it. Sam had also set up a blog where he was going to document everything that happened from day one of receiving this Dybbuk box to whenever they got rid of it or till whenever something happened. And for the first 2 weeks they had the Dybbuk box in their possession, nothing did happen. But when Sam started bringing the Dybbuk box out and leaving it right in the middle of these huge parties they would throw, or people were spilling beer on it and they were opening it up, putting things inside of it and making jokes with it, when they were doing that to the Dybbuk box, suddenly they started seeing a pretty significant uptick in strangeness inside of their house. It started with their technology. Sam's laptop crashed and the hard drive.
And then that.
Why do you have this Dybbuk box out? And you're going to a party with this Dybbuk box around.
Right? Like, we are not gonna.
Or are they just like 19? Like,
no, I feel like these are super adult people, and they're just like, yeah, I would not tease.
Come to my party. I have a haunted box.
I would not tease.
I'm not going.
I would not tease or mess with
here.
something like that. Like, I wouldn't mess with something like that. Why are you playing with it? Okay.
It was unrecoverable, so he had to replace his laptop. All of their watches just didn't work while they were in the house. No matter what they did, no matter when they fixed it, the watch just simply did not work. Their Xbox would not turn on, but when they brought it to another person's house, it worked just fine. It just couldn't work inside of their house. And the toaster, anytime you turned it on, it basically immediately incinerated whatever was put inside of it. But none of these technological difficulties were frightening to Sam or Brian. They were just frustrating. And I don't even think they were connecting them with the Dybbuk box. It was just this thing that was happening to them.
Nobody does.
It wasn't until the light bulbs in their house started bursting in the middle of the night that they started to get pretty creeped out about some of the things that were happening in their apartment. That now all of a sudden it did seem like, maybe if the Dybbuk box really is cursed, this might be how it would manifest. And so they'd replace the light bulb, and then sure enough, it would burst again. And they couldn't keep light bulbs in because they kept popping. And so their house was dark a lot of the time. But the worst part was when they had this massive insect infestation inside of their apartment. And they're really localized around the Dybbuk box. All these insects would come out of the walls, out of the toilets, out of the sink. They'd come from behind the fridge, and they would all kind of like converge on the Dybbuk box and go inside of it. The Dybbuk box at one point was swarming with insects all over, and they had to shut the door. They couldn't even.
Come on, man.
And yet they still keep the box.
Right. Why is this? How have you let all these things happen? And this box is still in your house. Even if I didn't all the way 100% think that this box was like the cause of these things.
It's a gift.
I'm starting to rule it. I would have thrown out like I would have got rid of the Xbox.
And I got bugs.
I would have got rid of my okay, I need an electrician. We need to install some new lights real quick.
I would have burned the house down.
I would have slowly started weeding. I would have started weeding out all the different things that could have been causing this problem. I would have figured out at some point in time that it was probably this box.
I would have figured it out right when it smelled like piss.
Right, and then let alone this box has all of a sudden has insects and stuff crawling by it. You never had bugs before, and now all of a sudden you got like bugs, and they're all like attracted to
And
this
you
box.
just keep buying light bulbs. I mean, how many light bulbs you gonna buy before it dawns on you?
Shro is right. What? What? What?
What?
What? What?
WTF?
Yes. What?
Oh yeah.
TF. God.
Even go in the room with the Dybbuk box because it was just covered in insects. But despite how scary this was for the boys, they had become kind of like a cool talking point on campus
been all
because of
men.
Sam's blog that a lot of other students were following.
Not
And
to
so the
judge, but it's
boys
been
kind
all
of
men
liked the
that are like,
clout they got
oh,
with
there's
that,
nothing
and
wrong
they
with the
decided they
box.
didn't want to get rid of the box after all. But it wasn't long after the insect infestation
I would've got rid of
that
it.
Sam began losing all of his hair, and at the same time, he started having this constant hallucination that there was an old woman in his peripheral vision on either side of his head pretty much at all times. Anywhere he went, there basically was someone he couldn't quite see following him around. Whether
No, man. See that gives me the heebie-jeebies. That kind of does it for me right there.
And yet you still keep the box.
I don't even. I mean, at this, like, okay, yeah, stuff like that gets me, and that we'll get into my ghost story at the end because it's kind of similar to that.
And again, I hate to gender blame,
Oh, yeah,
but come
don't.
on.
No.
Only the female at the store was the one to say, I'm out. Everybody else, oh no, and the mom who had she was like, it's the box.
Well, she
But
was
all
trying
the
to-
men are like, it's not the box. It can't be a box. Let's keep the box.
Okay, we're not gonna go into blaming genders on
I'm
this.
just explaining how the story is
But
going. It's not looking good for them.
if it was me, the box would have been gone a long time before it got a chance to attract bugs and me to see creepy ladies in my peripherals.
And make your house smell like this?
Yes, it would have been gone long time before that. Long time.
he was well rested, whether he was totally exhausted, it didn't matter. He always saw this shrouded dark figure that he believed was an old woman, and it scared him so much he couldn't sleep. And so he began going into Brian's room and sitting on Brian's bed because it was the one place he felt a little bit of comfort. And as he's sitting on the bed, he would see these dark figures standing on either side of him all night. And so finally, no matter how cool their blog was, it became too much, and they decided we have to get rid of the Dybbuk box. And so they put it on eBay, and very quickly it gets sold to a guy named Jason, who is this music.
This is why I don't do eBay.
Selling the box again.
This is why I don't do eBay.
It is the greed of these people that is causing this box to do all these different things. Nope. Like somebody has to end this. Somebody has to end the box.
There are way too many stupid people in this world.
There are way too many greedy people in this world. Like
You're
just
not
because
even
you
that greedy. You
got
got
it off just because you got it off
box. You got a box. You're not even using the box to store anything.
just because you got the box off of eBay does not mean that you in turn need to go put the box on eBay again and sell it. Like somebody stop the chain. Somebody, anybody.
Run it over.
Please.
They're not.
museum director over at this other university in Missouri, and he had actually been following along with Sam's blog. He was very interested in what was going on with the Dybbuk box, and when it was listed for sale, he was all over it. He wanted to buy it. So the boys eagerly ship off the Dybbuk box, and Jason receives it in the middle of a workday. So he puts the package in his truck, and he goes upstairs, and he works for the day. And then afterwards, when everyone's left the office, he goes downstairs, gets the package, brings it back up to his office, puts it on his desk, and he cuts open the packaging. Jason decided he wanted to evaluate the Dybbuk box the way he would evaluate any other antique or item that was coming into the museum that he was the director of. And so Jason starts by taking a whole bunch of pictures all around the outside of the Dybbuk box. And then he gets his black light out and he begins scanning around the outside, and he finds all these traces of wax all over the outside, which leads him to believe this was probably used in some sort of ritual. And then he takes a deep breath and he sits down right in front of the Dybbuk box, and he pops off the lock, he gets ready, and he opens the doors, and the drawer slides out with that whole mechanical device. It all kind of comes open, and Jason's totally let down because nothing happens. And part of him thought, like, if this thing is haunted, as soon as you open it up, the haunting's going to begin. And nothing happened. And he's pretty let down about it. And so ultimately, after staring at it and looking at the pennies that are in there and the Shalom statue and the locks of hair. He's just kind of let down by it, and he decides, okay, I kind of got my hopes up for something. This was clearly a hoax. There's nothing going on here. It's just a random old chest. And so he closes it up and he puts it on another desk that wasn't the one that he worked at, but was just kind of another table inside of this office that he shared with some other people. And he figured it would be a good talking point to tell his colleagues about, and it would be kind of like a showpiece. So the next day, his colleagues come in and he explains what a Dybbuk box is and the history around it, that it's supposed to be haunted, and it makes people sick and gives people strokes, and there's been insects that have been known to come out of it and go into it. It's this very creepy thing, and his colleagues are like, wow, that's pretty cool, but they don't think much of it until all of the electronics inside of their office start to fail. Namely, their computers start crashing and their IT department comes up and they're like, we don't know why this is happening, but sorry, we can't recover it. And the light bulbs kept going out to the point where they went out and got this huge pack of extra light bulbs to replace the light bulbs.
All the light bulbs.
Something they never had to do before, but all of a sudden the Dybbuk box is in the room and the light bulbs are going out left and right. And then finally, Jason's coworkers that share that space with the Dybbuk box, they all got sick and they blamed the Dybbuk box. They said, you know what? We were fine until that thing came in here. And now all of a sudden our computers don't work, the lights don't work, and we're getting sick. Get rid of it, Jason. So that day after work, Jason goes and takes the Dybbuk box, puts it in the back of his truck, and his truck had a cover on the back. So he secures it in the back, he drives home, and he doesn't want to bring it inside because it just seemed weird to bring a cursed object inside that his coworkers just made him get out of their space because it was making them sick and it was ruining their things. So he thinks, okay, I'll leave it in my truck overnight and I'll figure out what I'm going to do with it tomorrow. He goes inside, he says hi to his family, and before long it's time for bed and Jason goes to sleep. In order to understand what happened to Jason, you need to understand the layout of his house. When you open the front door, you walk inside and there's a wall on your right-hand side. That's the side of the house. And you walk forward about 5 or 6 feet, and on your left is a staircase that goes up to the second floor. If you walk up that staircase, straight ahead of you is going to be a bathroom. If you go left and walk down the hall another 5 or 6 feet, you come to the master suite where Jason and his wife would sleep. If you walk through that door, there is a wall on your left where there's a big bay window that looks out onto the street. And there's a big street light that sits right outside that projects very orangey yellow light into their room at night. Even though they have a shade up, it's this orange glow that comes through this window right here on this side. And then on the other side of the room is the bed. And the bed is situated where the feet are pointed towards this window over here, and the head of the bed is against this wall. And it's centered on this wall here. And Jason, if you were looking overhead at the top of this bed, Jason's on the left side, so he's the farthest into his room, and his wife is the closest into the room. So that night, Jason goes to bed and he falls asleep. But just a couple hours later, he wakes up suddenly and he can't move his body. He can only move his eyes. He's laying on his back, and the light from the street light is very strong. It's this orangey glow in their whole room. And he's laying there trying to move his hands and his legs, but he can't do it. And as he's doing that, he starts hearing footsteps out on the stairs. And they're distinctive sounds, slow, plodding steps all the way up to the second floor. And Jason's laying here with his eyes looking towards the door because his door is open and he can barely see into the second floor landing. And he's waiting to see who came up the stairs. And his heart's racing and he's looking, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees what looks like a dark figure begin to walk into the room. And his heart starts racing even faster when he can tell it's definitely not someone he knows. It's this woman, this older woman with a shawl over her head, and her head is tucked down so he can't see her. This is all out of the corner of his eye, and because of the orange hue coming in from the window, he can definitely tell that there's a real solid figure right there. This is not in his imagination, it's right there. And this woman begins shuffling her way across the foot of the bed, and right at the foot of the bed, as Jason's looking at her, she turns and looks directly at him. And then she runs around the corner and she looks down at him and she takes her fingers and she drives them into his eyes. And Jason thinks it's real and he's screaming in pain, and he wakes up and his wife is grabbing him and she's like, Jason, what's wrong? And he's like, what's going on? And she says, honey, it's just a bad dream. You're fine. And he's shaken up. His heart's still racing from this dream he's just had. And he's trying to think, like, that felt really real. And he's like feeling his eyes. And he can't believe that that was a dream. That was the most vivid dream he's ever had in his life. And so eventually he goes back to sleep. And then the next morning when he gets up, he goes in the bathroom and he looks at his eyes, and they're all red around the outside, and the whites of his eyes are covered in blood. His eyes look horrible, like he's having this terrible allergic reaction to something, or it looks like someone might have punched him in the eyes. or maybe gouged his eyes. That's how it looks. And his wife comes in and she's like, what happened to you? And he's like, oh my God, I have no idea. It was around this time that Jason began to think the Dybbuk box might just be cursed, because the 2 previous owners have said in their disclosures on eBay that horrible, vivid dreams, just like the one he had, to include physical manifestations, are part of having this Dybbuk box. Jason considered just dumping this thing in a dumpster somewhere, but then he was concerned that he might be passing on this Dybbuk box to someone who wasn't ready.
Destroy it.
And so he decided he would give it another day and he would do some research about how to properly dispose of the Dybbuk box. And so that night when Jason came back from work, he left the Dybbuk box in his truck, covered up in his driveway. And so Jason goes inside, he has dinner with his family, and then he's sitting down in the TV room and he's watching TV with his son. And as they're watching TV quietly, Jason hears his son say, hey Dad, who is that? And he looks over at his son, and his son is pointing behind him. And Jason turns around, and standing right behind him is the same woman who had come in his room with a shawl on, that gouged his eyes out in his dream, and then she suddenly disappears. And Jason's looking at his son like, you just saw that too? And he's like, yeah, who was that? And so Jason grabs his son, he yells for his wife and says, we have to leave the house right now. His wife comes downstairs and she's like, what's going on? And he was like, I will explain in the car, and we have to take your car. And so his wife sees how serious Jason is, and she says, okay, and they get into her car and they drive down the road. And that's when Jason explains what's going on with the Dybbuk box and how he and his son just saw the same woman that he had seen in his dream the night before that gouged his eyes, and his eyes were red, and his wife's starting to get really scared, and his son's really scared of what's going on. And so the solution they came up with was they were going to drive back to their house, drop Jason off, who was going to get in his truck where the Dybbuk box is still in the back. It's still locked in the back of the truck. And he's going to drive it a few miles outside of town to a rental property they owned that no one was staying in. And he was going to put it in the basement. And it was going to stay there until they figured out how to.
Why?
Still keeping it.
Still keeping it.
They're not there, but still keeping it anyway.
Why? Why? This box, I mean, you trying to find out how to properly dispose of this thing? Like, I'll show you how to properly dispose of it. It was going to be busted into 1,000 pieces and burned.
Yeah.
Like, gone. But maybe that's not the right thing to do. Maybe that's not the right thing to do. Let him do his research.
At least drop it off somewhere and then go home. Like, don't keep it on the property. Even if you're not there, that's
Those
still tied
because they didn't like the
Right.
idea of just dumping it somewhere, because they felt like if this is real and it's actually this cursed Dybbuk box, then somebody else is going to be cursed by this Dybbuk box unless we find a way, or at least attempt to find a way to contain it and destroy it. And so Jason gets dropped off, he gets in his truck, he drives to the rental property, he puts it in the basement, he seals it up, and he goes back to his house. Once Jason got back to his house, his wife and his son came back as well. And that night, Jason would go on eBay and he would find the contact information for Kevin, the original owner of the Dybbuk box, after the estate sale. And he called him that night, and Kevin actually picked up, and the two of them spoke, and Kevin ultimately agrees to help Jason find a way to properly dispose of this Dybbuk box. And what Kevin offers to do is drive back to the house where he had originally purchased this Dybbuk box and see if he can get some more information about what it is and what they do with it. The next day, Kevin, the antique shop owner, he goes back to the house where he originally bought the Dybbuk box at the estate sale. He knocks on the door, and an old woman comes to the door, and Kevin introduces himself, and he says, hey, I was here not too long ago, and I purchased lot 29 that included that Dybbuk box, and I wanted to know some more information about it. And the woman reacted, and she's like, I told my family not to sell that. I know what was inside of it, and I know you're not supposed to open it, and I tried to tell my family, and they didn't listen. I really hope you didn't open it. And Kevin's like, actually, yeah, I did open it.
Everybody opened it.
Horrible things that happened.
It's been opened a lot.
Selling it, and all the subsequent owners,
All the
had all
opens.
these issues, and how they've arrived at this place now where Jason in Missouri is having all these issues, and they're trying to find a way to dispose of it. And that's when Sophie describes what's actually inside of this box. Sophie said she lived in Poland before World War II with her cousin Havila, who was the woman who had passed away, and all her things were being sold at the estate sale. And she said that at the time, it was all the rage to have seances and try to talk to dead people and spirits, and they would just do it for fun. Sophie, Havila, and their mother, they would do this for fun. And Havila had made this Ouija board where she had stitched letters onto this blanket, and they put it over this table, and they would all hold this
Great
pendant
fun.
that was suspended
That
by a
sounds so
chain,
fun.
and they would ask questions, and they would hope that a spirit that they were interacting with would interact with this chain, and it would swivel around the pendant, and it would point to the different letters whenever they asked a question, and it would spell out, whatever their answer was. And Sophie said nothing ever happened. It was just kind of a fun thing for them to do. But one time it did work, and they said the chain would go rigid, and it would point over and over, and it would spell the words, "Release me, release me, release me." Sophie said the women were incredulous and didn't believe it at first, but then they started to worry that if they didn't help this thing, that if it were a Dybbuk and were a malevolent spirit, they would find a way to attach itself to one of them. And so Sophie said they devised this ritual where they released it, but into this wine box that they were able to shut and lock. And that wine box became the Dybbuk box. And that Dybbuk box is the same one that was sold to Kevin. Kevin told Sophie that, what do? We've already opened it up. And she said, you need to contact a rabbi. And so they would call a rabbi, and apparently they were able to reclaim the Dybbuk inside of the box and lock it and put it away in a secret location where it's been since 2003. And apparently since it's been sealed off, Jason and Kevin have said they've experienced no demonic activity, and they never plan to tell anybody where this thing is because they don't want anyone else to have even the opportunity to reopen the Dybbuk box and have to deal with all the horrible things that they went through. So that's going to do it, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you found the secret and
dude, man,
I enjoyed the story.
I did too.
But I was beating, metaphorically, beating my head against the wall because of everybody wanting to hang on to this box or just give it to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, like it's one thing to be looking for a solution to get it, like you know something's wrong with it, so you're trying to get it like
contact a rabbi
like
right
cleanse,
away.
like you know, destroy the correct way.
I feel like it's like, you're kind of like a crummy person to just like pass it on to somebody else. Be like, you know what's going on, and you're just like, meh, good luck, next person.
Let me put it up on eBay and give it to somebody. Like that's bad. That's bad.
You just want to curse somebody else. It's not
that is bad. That is bad.
I loved it though.
Shro said creepy but good. Yes, definitely creepy but good. I think that's a lot of his stories are like creepy but good. And
a good one.
Yeah, I feel like if there was something like that in my house, that I would have gotten rid of it as soon as possible. Like as soon as possible. Like I would have had to get that thing away. As soon as I realized that this thing was possibly causing an issue, I would have gotten rid of it. Okay, so story time, real quick, story time.